19th century wooden gate of Mexico's executive seat of power. Others sprayed graffiti on the stone walls made of volcanic rock, which read, "They're killing us," and accusing the state of complicity.
Todo nuestro respeto para el movimiento feminista.
Inside, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador gave his daily morning press conference and tried to set out his position on the protests and the latest spate of femicides in Mexico as clearly as possible.
Celebramos que las mujeres defiendan sus derechos.
We celebrate that women are defending their right to security. I declare myself in favour of women, against femicide. I'm against machismo. I don't want there to be any doubt about that.
No quiero que quede ninguna duda sobre eso.
However, President López Obrador has also misjudged his comments recently. After a 7-year-old girl called Fatima Cecilia Alderite was abducted, sexually abused and murdered last month, he blamed the problem on neoliberalism. Such comments were of little comfort to mothers like Araceli Mondragon Sanchez. Her daughter Abigail was the victim of femicide on the 11th of December 2016. Abigail's lifeless body was found near some football pitches where the last man she'd been seen with worked. Her mother tearfully explains that the man, Juan Velázquez, was the best friend of Abigail's supposed new boyfriend.
I went into shock, and because here in Mexico the authorities are so bad, so heartless, they made me make a statement at that point. I still hadn't understood what had happened to my daughter. No one let me know as a victim the support I'm entitled to, psychological support, legal advice, and the right not to give testimony at a moment like that, when it can later harm the case.
Juan Velázquez was detained, along with the boyfriend Ivan and his cousin, who'd been with Abigail in her final moments. Yet within a day, all three were released without charge. Key pieces of evidence, including used condoms taken from the scene, were lost or never properly recorded. After a long legal battle, Juan Velázquez was eventually convicted, but his 2 alleged accomplices remain free. Abigail was just one of 10 women killed that day in December 2016, indeed who are killed every single day in Mexico, a statistic which has shocked the country.
In the past 2 years, around 8,000 women have been murdered.
Maria de la Luz Estrada is the president of the National Citizens Observatory on Femicide, an NGO which offers legal support to victims' families.
Women and young people say, "I don't want to be afraid. I want to be able to walk home safely." And they are demanding action from a new government, which generated high hopes when they came to power, as they promised they'd be different to previous administrations and not look the other way.
The feminists' detractors accuse them of vandalism and say the more radical ones are harming their message by damaging national statues and monuments on their marches. Grieving mother Araceli Mondragon has very little patience for that particular argument.
I've been on those marches too, and we take radical action because we're tired. We're full of fury. Why? Because they are our daughters, whose lives were taken in the cruelest way. Those who judge us should just hope that they're never in our shoes, because that will be the day that they'll truly understand us.
We'll go out reporting from Mexico.
So, here's an idea for you. Picture our Earth some 3 billion years ago. New research suggests that it may have been a water world of submerged continents. In other words, it may have once been completely covered in water. Examination of an ancient slab of ocean floor from Australia suggests that the planet once had no separate continents, according to a report in the journal Nature Geoscience. We're joined now by one of the 2 authors of that report, Benjamin Johnson, a geologist from Iowa State University. Good to have you on, Benjamin. How do you know?
Nice to be here. Hello.
Yeah, how do you know that the Earth was covered in water 3 billion years ago?
Sure. So what we were doing is looking at this ancient piece of ocean crust that interacted with the ocean at that time. We don't have any samples of the ocean from 3 billion years ago, but we do have these rocks from that time that interacted with the ocean and sort of remember what the composition of the ocean was like.
The rocks are 3 billion years old?
They're actually 3.2 billion years old, so they're even a little bit older than than that, yeah.
And tell me a bit more about what you learned from observing them.
Sure. So this section in Australia is an ancient hydrothermal field. So you've maybe seen pictures of these vents on the seafloor with bubbling hot water. And we can look at the patterns of alteration that the ocean sort of imparted on the rocks. And we can look at the oxygen isotope composition of the rocks. That is sort of the chemistry of oxygen in the rocks to get after that composition in the ocean, which is sensitive to the presence or absence of land above sea level.
That's fascinating. And then how do you then date it back?
So these rocks have been worked on for a long time, and so we were relying on previous authors who actually dated the material. So they use uranium and lead. Yeah, this area has been studied before, but we sort of came in here using a new technique. We built this sort of this model that kind of undoes all this alteration that's happened in the rock to kind of back out that primary composition of the seawater. So we built upon, some previous work, but came in with this new approach to kind of an old question, which is when did the continent come up above sea level? Was our big goal in this work.
And what is the picture that you see of the Earth 3 billion years ago?
Yeah, I think my co-author Boswell Wing has a really nice image. It's like approaching the Galapagos Islands from off to the west. There's ocean on all sides of you with these tiny little volcanic islands just sort of peeking up above sea level here and there. So there probably was some land above sea level, but just these little volcanic islands are nothing like today where we have big continental areas, soils are forming. It'd be more of a Kevin Costner type Waterworld situation with little bits of land rather than big continents.
Were you surprised that the Earth may once never have had large land masses?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because geologists have been asking this for a long time, and we've been coming at it from two perspectives. One is when did we make the rocks that made up the continents, and those seem really old. But we didn't really have an idea when they came up above sea level. That's sort of a different and interesting question. And there's a whole range of estimates out there from 4 billion years ago to 800 billion years ago. And so I'm not totally surprised that the Earth was like that at all at one point. You have to build up continents over time. I was a little surprised that we saw such a clear signal in the rocks from Australia. It's really most simply explained by the lack of continents above sea level.
Briefly,
at the time. It was really clear. Yeah.
Briefly, if you can, why is this stuff important?
This sets the environment for early life on the planet. The origin and evolution of early life has to have been mostly marine at this point, so it has implications for the evolution of Earth, the evolution of life, and maybe for exoplanets too, how other planets that are like Earth elsewhere evolve as well.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for helping us understand this. We've been speaking there to Benjamin Johnson, a geologist from Iowa State University. And Paul, that's what the world looks like.
Yeah, like Kevin Costner's Waterworld, but without Kevin Costner, which some people might think is a good thing.
3 billion years ago.
Yeah.
3 billion.
Yeah.
You're listening to the BBC World Service, where Harriet Gilbert talks to Leila Slimani for this month's World Book Club.
When you're a novelist, you have to use your nightmares and you have to use your bad thoughts. You have to use all the things that you can't express in front of other people.
Lullaby is a dark psychological thriller, a story of race, class division, power, resentment, and jealousy.
When you write, you have to leave a space for the reader's imagination.
A prosperous Parisian couple think they've found the perfect nanny to care for their children, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
I wanted to say to the reader, look, you're with me, take my hand. We are together in this story. It's going to be hard.
Leila Slimani joins me to talk about her novel, Lullaby.
World Book Club at bbcworldservice.com/World Book Club.
Hello, welcome. Newsday on the BBC World Service. Paul Hawkins and Alan Kasucha with you.
Where is the coronavirus in Africa?
Lombardy, which is Italy's richest region, has been quarantined. How are the surrounding areas being affected?
Reports from Cameroon say armed separatists attacked a village in the country's western French-speaking region on Sunday, killing at least 7 people.
And also, trees in the Congo Basin are losing their ability to absorb carbon dioxide. Why?
BBC News with Stuart McIntosh. 100 more people have died from COVID-19 over the last 24 hours in Italy's worst affected region of Lombardy. 366 people have now lost their lives across Italy. Widespread restrictions are in force. The mayor of Daegu in South Korea, the city worst hit by coronavirus, says the outbreak there is showing signs of slowing down. For the third day, there's been a decline in the number of confirmed cases. 248 people have tested positive in 24 hours. Asian stock markets plunged at the start of trade on Monday after a sharp fall in oil prices, while coronavirus keeps adding to the investors' nervousness. Shares in the Sydney Stock Exchange, Australia's main share index market, plummeted by 6.6% on the first day of trading after the weekend. Tokyo's main index, the Nikkei, has gone down by more than 5%. In Mexico City, a huge march to mark International Women's Day sparked clashes with riot police, the most radical element of the women's movement there, threw paint at the National Palace. The Afghan Defense Minister has warned that the Taliban must stop attacks on the security forces by the end of this week or become a target themselves. Asadullah Khalid said the plan had been to transform a reduction in violence in the run-up to the US Taliban deal into a more permanent ceasefire. But days after signing, the Taliban announced they were resuming operations against Afghan forces. Aid agencies in Yemen are warning of a new crisis in what is already the world's worst humanitarian disaster. A recent upsurge in fighting has displaced tens of thousands of people, leaving them without food, shelter, or medical care. BBC News.
Thank you very much for that news. Hello, welcome. It's Newsday coming to you live from London. Alan Kasucha and Paul Hawkins with you.
Good to have you with us. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, the trees in the mighty Congo Basin are losing their ability to absorb carbon dioxide. It seems that's not good for climate change, so we'll talk about that. And we'll hear about a race against time in eastern Australia to save seeds from some of the plants that have nearly become extinct due to the terrible fires a few months ago. Remember, if there's anything you hear on the programme that you want to talk about, do drop us a WhatsApp or a text message. We do love to hear from you. The number is +44 77 86 20 50 85. Now, since the African continent's first COVID-19 case was confirmed last month in Egypt, more and more cases are being reported, but still the numbers in Africa are very low compared to other parts of the world. Krutika Kapali is an infectious diseases doctor and biosecurity fellow at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security.
We're not as bad as it is in other parts of the world, but we're still seeing an increase in number of cases. As of this moment, there's a report of 83 cases, with Egypt being at the top of the list with 49, and Algeria second with 19.
Why is the disease taking more time to spread to Africa? Is it simply sort of behind the infection curve, if you can call it that?
I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think there's probably a variety of reasons. They have had some cases that have come in recently into Algeria. The first case was related to a passenger coming from Italy, in Nigeria as well, and then in Senegal, patients coming from France. So it appears these cases that have been detected are, coming from Europe rather than China. Especially now as we're seeing more and more cases, we'll have to make sure that patients don't have contacts related to travel in other parts of the world.
But the point has to be made, though, that Sub-Saharan Africa doesn't have the sort of number of cases the rest of the world is doing. Has. That point needs to be emphasized. Isn't that true?
Thus far, they don't have the number of cases as the rest of the world has. Just because they haven't been detected yet doesn't mean that they don't have more cases. But by all accounts, from the information we have seen coming from Africa, they've been doing a good job of doing screening of patients for any concern of COVID-19.
Uganda decided on a blanket ban on people coming in. As a matter of fact, 22 people were turned away. They'd come in for an EU business conference, but they were turned away after they refused a 14-day quarantine, and they're being very strict in enforcing that. Do you think that is the sort of measure that would help or protect African countries?
One of the things that we've seen, not just with this outbreak, but outbreaks in the past, is that things like closing borders don't tend to necessarily be the best way to prevent infection. People who have infection, or if they really want to get into the country, will find ways to do so. So while that might slow things, it doesn't necessarily prevent infections from getting into the country.
I was told earlier by virologists the biggest factor in fatality with this virus is age. Africa being a pretty young continent overall, that helps shield it in some way from the virus, does it?
Not necessarily. Yes, you are correct. The data thus far that we've seen is people that are older and have comorbid conditions like diabetes and hypertension and coronary disease are the ones who tend to do worse. However, that doesn't mean that people who are younger haven't gotten sick or haven't had adverse outcomes from the disease. So, there are other things that we have to think about when caring for patients. It's not just their age and their comorbidities, but also the strength of the healthcare system and the ability to take care of patients, and the ability to also deal with the infection control concerns we have when it comes to COVID-19.
So that is the situation in Africa with regards to the coronavirus outbreak. Ritika Kupali there, an infectious diseases doctor. In just over 2 hours' time, 6:50 in the morning London time, we've got another doctor answering your questions about the coronavirus. You can WhatsApp us, you can text us your questions about COVID-19, about this current strain of coronavirus. You can also drop us a tweet at BBC World Service, or you can drop off your questions on our Facebook page. The number for WhatsApp and text messages, +44 77 86 20 50 85, and then the doctor will go through your answers, through your questions, I should say, and try and give you as comprehensive an answer as possible at time 6:50 in the morning GMT. The doctor will see you then.
Now, let's hear from Italy, which has the highest number of confirmed infections outside China, where the outbreak originated in December. Italy has imposed sweeping restrictions on the movement of 16 million people, and these apply to the entire Lombardy region, which is Italy's richest, and 14 other provinces.
Now, the strict new quarantine measures affect a quarter of the Italian population. Bethany Bell reports from Bologna, just outside the affected area.
In a cobbled, porticoed square surrounded by magnificent Renaissance palaces, Domenico, who works in the hotel trade in Bologna, told me he's not worried about the virus, but about the way the government is handling it.
We have been perhaps too honest. The Italian government has been very honest with everybody, and therefore finding people and so on. But we are paying, a very, very high price for this, so I'm not happy.
You work in tourism, which is, of course, a big industry here in Bologna, here in Italy in general. How's it being impacted? What are you noticing?
It's a nightmare. Consider that was supposed to be the highest season, so especially this week, this time, March is one of the best months for us, and everything has been cancelled.
Bologna's tourism is suffering, and it's not even in the quarantine red zone. Venice is. The governor of Veneto, Luca Zaia, says Venice, Padua and Treviso should be free from restrictions.
Quindi anche Padova paga questo. Allora, il nostro comitato scientifico, noi sosteniamo.
Our scientific committee says these are disproportionate measures, and we of course agree. I've sent a letter to the President of the Council asking for the 3 Venetian provinces to be removed from the lockdown.
Inside Bologna's great Basilica Church, there are a few visitors looking at the frescoes and 1 or 2 people praying. But there are signs up saying Mass has been cancelled for fear of the virus. Outside in the piazza, though, life goes on as normal. There are people sunning themselves on the steps of the church, children are playing in the middle of the square, and the cafes are full.
But things are very different just a bit further north in Piacenza, which is now under quarantine. Sitting by a smartphone, Jane Upchurch, who lives there with her family, says this is a very uncertain time.
It is affecting us in lots of ways. My parents are supposed to be coming in April, but I think that's not happening now, so it's going to affect that. You go past the shop and think, should I go in an enclosed space? Is it a good idea? Should I just carry on walking? So it is a bit claustrophobic because you really don't know what to do. You want to go out, but you don't think it's a good idea. And now we're in the red zone. They've told us to go out as little as possible. So it will become more claustrophobic in the next month, definitely, I think.
At a pub in Bologna, people seated at safe distances from each other watch a football match on TV, played in an empty stadium. But Giovanni is philosophical.
We are not scared. Do I see this impacting our lives? Yes, of course it does. But, you know, as Italians, of course, we are optimistic, and we also believe there is a second chance for everybody. Sure.
Bethany Bella reporting from Bologna, just outside the affected areas in Italy.
Reports from Cameroon say armed separatists attacked a village in the country's western French-speaking region on Sunday, killing at least 7 people. Cameroon's Anglophone rebels have been fighting since 2017 to create an independent English-speaking state in the majority French-speaking country. Now, the United Nations says that the conflict has cost more than 3,000 lives and massive displacement. Professor John Mokombaku is from Cameroon and is also a senior fellow with the Brookings Institution. Good to have on Newsday. Have you been able to speak to anybody who can tell us a bit more about what's happening?
Yes, I talked to 3 people in Cameroon, but what they told me was that they were not able to travel to the area where the conflict is and verify the nature of the attack, or say for certain who was actually responsible for the attack and why they did so. Okay. And they told me, so I asked them if they had confidence in the information being provided by the governor of the region, of the West region, and they told me that given the problems they had with government before, they were not very confident what the government was telling them.